It's another day where we talk about cars. This is Auto Guide. My name is Andrew Ogunlano. Next topic, we're going to talk about engine coolant, or what some of you might have in your car might be water. But essentially, the days of using water for coolant purposes is long gone. Now we use coolants. The reason why we use coolants is because coolants have properties that water doesn't have. I don't know if you guys remember, but back in the day, you would open your coolant reservoir, and what you will find is you would find that the water is a bit brown. That is basically caused by your radiator rusting. Your radiator would rust because you have water in it. All right? You know, cars actually go up to above 100 degrees, and you know water boils at 100 degrees. So when it boils and it cools and it boils and it cools, inside of a radiator, which is metal, you would find that as it boils, the radiator in its composition will start to lose a bit of that composition. So eventually what will now happen is that radiator internally will start to rust. And that's why we've moved from using water in a coolant reservoir to coolants. Now, coolants have a higher boiling temperature. Some of them don't boil to 138 degrees. So it's hardly that you would see a coolant boiling. And then they have additives in them. And these additives basically are anti-rust additives. That means your radiator stays good, all right? So if you use green coolants, red coolant, yellow coolant, what you will find is that coolant never really changes color, because it doesn't get to the point where the radiator is rusting and it will cause the coolant to change its color. All right, so a check you should do when you want to drive your car is that you want to check your coolant level. Most cars these days have a coolant reservoir, which is this, and a cover to the radiator. All right, and what happens is the radiator has got coolant in it, but it gets any additional coolant from the reservoir. So you can't really measure the coolant in your radiator. So what you want to be looking at is the level of coolant in your reservoir. As you can see, the reservoir here, this is a Toyota Land Cruiser V8 engine. It basically has this reservoir that has the marking of F for full. So this line means full, and this line here means low. What you want to do is make sure that your coolant level is at least at the full line, which would be ideal. But if it's even a little bit lower, don't add water. Just find a way to get some coolant to top it up to the full level. But it's okay to drive your car even if it's just below the full level. You just want to make sure it's not close to the low level. All right? So, coolants, as I say, are very important. The function they perform is they actually cool the engine as the engine gets hotter. The idea is that you want to make sure that your engine stays cool. If you run out of coolant, a lot of bad things can happen. Coolant can disappear a number of ways. If you have a leaking radiator, your coolant will be low. If you have a leaking radiator cap, your coolant could escape from there, because when it gets hot, obviously it starts to steam out of there. You might have a faulty fan. If you have a faulty radiator fan, then obviously that would mean that your car is not cooling properly, and that might diminish your coolant. You might have a hose that is leaking, either because the bracket is not properly tight, or it has a cut or a hole. So these are different things that can cause your coolant level to go down. So once you see a low coolant, it's not happening by magic. Something is actually wrong. So what you want to do, obviously, is come to a garage like ours, and we will carefully check your cooling system, making sure that you don't have a leak, making sure that your fan works properly, making sure that your radiator cap is properly fastened and has not experienced any wear and tear, and essentially just checking your whole cooling system altogether to make sure that your coolant level never depreciates. One more thing. I've heard so many times that a lot of technicians out there talk about removing the thermostat from your engine. That's a very bad idea. The companies that manufacture these cars have put those thermostats in there for a reason. And the idea is that the thermostat is an intelligent way by which the car receives coolant, right? Depending on the temperature of your engine, the thermostat will contract and allow for coolant to flow into the engine. If you don't have a thermostat, then you just have basically your coolant just flowing free flow, no intelligence or anything of that nature. So that thermostat should stay in. If you don't have a thermostat in your engine, go put it back in, all right? And make sure the thermostat works accordingly. The myth that says that the Nigerian weather is hot is just a myth. You've got hotter weathers in places that these cars are manufactured. So obviously they've taken into account temperatures of different climates, and they've made sure that the car can function in those different temperatures. So the idea of removing your thermostat is definitely a bad idea, and if you get told to do that, you want to make sure that you obviously don't, all right? So that's my tip on coolant and how you should manage and check your coolant in your engine.